Hey guys, how's it going? So, whether you're watching TV or reading the news or even talking to people in real life who are somewhat anti-gun or don't like guns or want guns banned, you guys know the type, right? They always ask the same question. And I know this is kind of an obvious thing, but I'm going to give you guys some of the ideas on how I answer the obvious question. And that is, why do you need an AR-15? And what makes you think that you're allowed to own one? And I know you guys have been asked this before, or at the very least, seen people ask this question on TV. So I'm going to give you guys some ideas. Maybe these are some responses you can give back to people. And if you guys have other ways that you word it to people or other ideas, then put it down in the comments and we'll talk about it. I always enjoy hearing from you guys. So first and foremost, an AR-15, or any firearm as far as that goes, is an inanimate object. It is a piece of property. And in the United States of America, we are allowed to own property. Now, as far as owning properties goes, we're also allowed to collect things. Some people enjoy collecting postage stamps, and that would be a fine hobby and perfectly legitimate. Do you need to collect postage stamps? No, but as an American citizen, we're allowed to collect things, right? Some people collect coins. Do I need this coin? No, but I like it. So on a core fundamental level, this is just a piece of property that we're allowed to own for any reason or for no reason, or just because we like collecting it, right? Another thing is we have a lot of sports in this country. We play football, hockey, baseball, basketball, people run, people skateboard, so many sports I can't even count them all, right? And target shooting and sporting events is also a completely legitimate reason to own an AR-15. In fact, you'll see in the competition world, the AR-15 is by far the #1 chosen so-called sporting rifle. Hey, in and of itself, that's also a perfectly legitimate reason that you own one. And you have the right to participate in sports in this country. And you have the right to collect, right? Now, there's also hunting, which also stands on its own 2 feet as a perfectly legitimate reason to own a firearm. Hunting is somewhat of a sport. Hunting is hanging out with your friends, your family, recreation, having a good time, part of the general pursuit of happiness that our founding fathers declared that we're entitled to, right? Also helps supplement your diet, gives you food to eat. You know, we live in a first world country. We can buy food at the grocery store, but hunting wild game is much healthier, and sometimes it's cheaper. Sometimes, as you guys know who are hunters, it costs a lot more than just buying it at the store. But hey, we still need to feed ourselves, right? And these are all important reasons, and I don't want to diminish any of them. All of them do stand on their own 2 feet. This is how powerful gun ownership is in the United States. But as you guys probably know, these aren't actually the most important reasons that we own firearms, even though I don't want to take anything away from them. So when they say, why do you need an AR-15? Well, first of all, this is codified in the Bill of Rights. And I would remind people, it's the Bill of Rights, not the Bill of Needs. And basically, in the Bill of Rights, what the Bill of Rights does is it prohibits the government from treading on many of our core, essential, God-given rights. And I want to clarify what the Bill of Rights actually are, including the Second Amendment, and what they are not. And many of us, when we're talking to other people, we kind of make a little bit of a mistake sometimes. And we say, look, the Second Amendment gives us the right to keep and bear arms. It actually doesn't. It's actually way more powerful than that. See, fundamental rights like the freedom of speech, the right to keep and bear arms to protect ourselves and our country, these are rights that are given to us by our Creator, by God. Creator can mean different things to different people, but in the context of the founding fathers, they were referring to primarily the Christian God, but many other creators and gods also tell people they have the right to protect themselves and to defend themselves, right? So we already had the God-given right to own firearms to protect ourselves by whatever means are necessary and appropriate, right? Back in biblical times, it was the sword. Nowadays, and for the last several hundred years, it's been the firearm. And today, it's the AR-15. So God gave us our rights. Jesus even said to use the sword if you need to, right? So We had the right already, just as human beings, as God's creation. What the Second Amendment says is there's nothing the government is allowed to do to take that from us. Because we've all heard it a million times, but just think about it. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So the important part when it comes to the right, the fact that the government can't touch it is the shall not be infringed part. And this is very important to note. It doesn't say that the government of the United States or the Founding Fathers or James Madison or Ben Franklin, it doesn't say they gave you the right to keep and bear arms. No. They're acknowledging you already have that right and you will always have that right. It prohibits the government from infringing upon your rights and passing any laws that would ever take that away from you. So just remember that point. There is a difference. There's a notable difference. And people have kind of gotten in the habit of saying, well, that's the same thing, that you're allowed to, versus that the government's prohibited from taking something you already had. And here's another way of looking at this. If, for whatever reason, you're hard up and I give you this quarter, okay, and say, well, I gave this to you. I can come back to you later and say, hey, give me my quarter back. And if you don't, you're now indebted to me in some way, and I have something over on you, right? And that's what it would be if the government actually gave us the right to keep and bear arms. But they did not. And since they did not give it to us, they cannot take it away from us. And in case they decided to try to take it away from us, they put it in the Second Amendment. See, they almost didn't put it there because they thought, well, this is obvious that people are always going to have this right. This is how our country was just formed, 15 years earlier at that time when we declared our independence from Great Britain and from the king. But they still put it in there because they said, you know what? There could be a time later on when the government could start to try to infringe. And it would try to infringe on people's rights so that it could become tyrannical and it could become oppressive. And it could go back to similar to what we were oppressed under the King of England. That's what they were thinking at that time. So they didn't grant you anything in the Bill of Rights. They strictly acknowledged that we have it and prohibited the government from ever even daring to not only just take it away, but to even encroach on it, to even consider taking anything from us. So with that in mind, besides all the other things I said earlier, another reason, obviously, as given by God to us, we have the right to keep an AR-15 to defend ourselves, to defend our family, to defend our loved ones, our neighbors, whoever it is that could be, in a life-threatening situation for whatever reason. We have the right to defend them, right? And that's a very, very important thing. There's really nothing more important than to be able to defend yourself and your loved ones, your children, your mother, your father, your wife, etc. And look, I'm not taking anything away from that, but there's probably actually one more important reason why we have AR-15s and why we need them. And that would be the reason why the government put in the Second Amendment, to forbid the government from treading on it. Because the main thing they were worried about was that the government could or would inevitably become tyrannical. And that they could try to oppress the people again. And if you look at how the Revolutionary War actually started, it wasn't over the tea tax. Yeah, that got people disgruntled. It wasn't over a lot of other things. It was over the fact that they were confiscating guns. They were confiscating cannonballs, gunpowder, artillery, weapons, right? And when Paul Revere did his courageous and famous, midnight ride, the British are coming. Well, he probably didn't actually say the British are coming because at that time, he was actually a proper British citizen himself. But what he did most likely say is the Redcoats are coming. And what he was warning them about is they were coming to confiscate guns, arms, gunpowder, muskets, etc., right? So, the famous ride of Paul Revere was a warning that there was gun confiscation coming. And the original forefathers, some of the bravest people we've ever had in this country, they said, no, we're not going to give them up. We're going to keep them. And they fought a revolutionary war against the largest military superpower of the time. Probably 10 times more powerful militarily than the United States is today. They fought against them because they weren't going to hand these over. And they fought, and a lot of people died. And a very small percentage of the actual colonists actually took up arms against the British. A very small percent. Some people say 3%. Some people say maybe only 1%. But they fought back, and their tactics were better than the British. They had more heart than the British. We were better fighters than the British, and that's why we have the United States of America. This grand experiment on self-governance, a government of the people and by the people, where our politicians and our leaders are supposed to be servants to us, and it's strictly prohibited that they were to ever tread on our rights. So probably the most important reason that we need an AR-15 is to fight against the exact reason that they want to take them from us now. It's to fight tyranny. It's to fight a potential foreign invader, and it's also to fight potential tyranny on our soil in the USA, that if our government were to ever become oppressive, and our government were to ever try to take our liberty away, that we could stand up and fight. And that's why it was put there. Now, I'm not inciting that we go to battle right now. I'm not inciting any violence on anyone. I'm just saying this is the reason why we need an AR-15. Yeah, it's because we're allowed to own property. We're allowed to collect. I get it. We're allowed to enjoy sporting activities, and those are great too. We're also allowed to hunt, and that's awesome. But it's not about hunting. They didn't put this in there for hunting in 1791 when the Second Amendment was written. No. It was assumed back then you hunted or you didn't eat. It was to stand down an oppressive government. If it were ever to go tyrannical, we would say, nope, that's it. You're not going to take our guns away. Because this government was set up to be run by the people, by you, by me, and by the 100 million other gun owners in this country. Now, of course, protecting our family and our loved ones is the most important thing in a way, but like I said earlier, probably fighting off a tyrannical government is the most important, because look at governments that we've had in the past in other countries before, under fascism, socialism, the Third Reich, governments like that where tens of millions and hundreds of millions of people died. That's not a safe place for your family either. The best way to keep your family safe is to keep this country the land of the free, the home of the brave, a well-regulated militia, meaning a well-armed general society, well-trained, people that are at the ready, actual Minutemen. That is the way that we're going to keep ourselves and our family safe and enjoy all the freedoms that we currently have in this country. So, those are some of the ways I look at it as far as why am I allowed to have an AR-15? You know, why do I need an AR-15? And it's going to come down to this. There's so many people saying they want to take your AR-15. They want to take your guns. Look, we need to fight everything legislatively. Keep calling your senators, your representatives. Call the White House. We've backed them down quite a bit from this recent surge of gun control by doing those calls. So don't let up, guys. But in the end, we're responsible for our own safety. We're responsible for our own protection. And you and I and all of the rest of us are responsible for keeping this country free, keeping this country great, and resisting tyranny. So if they ever do tell me that I have to give up my AR-15, that some kind of fake law, some kind of unconstitutional law is going to prohibit me from having this, I'm going to give you guys the same advice I'm going to take. I will not comply. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and have a good one.